Young adult isn't really my thing, but I read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes just because my wife is a big Hunger Games fan. She's got all the movies, she's got the collector edition books with the art and stuff in them. She's read all of them and all that stuff. And I thought it was good. It definitely wasn't my thing, and I didn't love it. Let me just kind of break that down. So first off, when they first told me that she had come out with this book, my first thought was, this doesn't really seem necessary. And then when they said it was about President Snow, before he was President Snow, rather than how the Hunger Games got started, I didn't really feel compelled to read it. In fact, had my wife not watched it, read it, I probably wouldn't have. In fact, I think the only reason why I've read it isn't even necessarily because my wife read it, because after she read it, she watched the movie, and I was just like, well, now I need to know how the book actually went, because the movie was a big step down from the original quintet. I was like, well, let's see the book and see what's going on here. So that was getting into it was maybe already I had some marks against it, but once I got into it, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. The book, the summary of the book is basically how Snow became Snow, and this was done very well, because it wasn't done in such a way where she's trying to build suspense for President Snow, like, oh, is he going to die in this scene? Because we already know that he doesn't, right? So instead what she does is she gives us this internal glimpse of President Snow that was not possible to have done in the original trilogy. She could have tried to weasel it in the original trilogy, but it would have made it awkward and wordy, and it wouldn't have flowed. It just wouldn't have been right. But this was a perfect opportunity to do that. So in this book, we get a glimpse of Snow, and boy, oh boy, is he's a problem. He's a narcissist. I mean, like, massively a narcissist. He's very controlling. He's disconnected from his life. Not good things. And I feel like a lot of people, when they were reading this, kind of overlooked his warning flags and warning signs. And I think that's a bad thing, because that tells me that they didn't see a problem with all of his red flags. That's a problem. We see it through his perspective, and he is very much so an imperfect narrator. Some of the ways that he's an imperfect narrator is, an unreliable narrator. Well, same thing. But one of the ways he's an unreliable narrator is that you see everything through his view, which is skewed. I mean, he plays all these mental gymnastics to see something where there isn't, to see the worst in people, to make himself right and everybody else is wrong, and just this he has this uncanny ability to just twist everything. Now, if you've known somebody who's like that, I mean, the character work here is just phenomenal. Now, that's not to say that everybody's character work was done fantastically, but there are some other people done well, just not as well as President Snow. So you have President Snow that's done like the best character work in the book, and then you have some other people in the book that good character development and whatnot, but not, it doesn't like blow you out of the water. It's not like Wheel of Time level, right? But then you have just like the fillers, the people who are just kind of there, and they're kind of one-dimensional and just kind of blah. It doesn't really matter because those people don't really play a whole big part in the story, so it's fine. Now, the biggest problem with this book is divided up into three parts: part 1, part 2, part 3. And in those three parts, it feels like three novellas that are then taken together and shoved into one book that made one a novel that was just too long. And so whereas I liked what was happening, what in essence what that left us with was novella 1 had a slow build and then a great climax. Novella 2 did the same thing. Novella 3 did the same thing. So in essence, you got one novel that felt a little bit too long because it was doing too many storylines that should have been a trilogy of novellas, I guess. And so you had three separate lulls. So you get to the first lull and you think, okay, that's just the beginning of book stuff. But then you get into part 2 of the same book and you're like, I'm going through another beginning of the book lull. And then you get to the third and you do it 3 times. You're just like, by the end of it, you're thinking, man, this is going too long. And there's just, the lulls are just, it's just too much. That's my own take. I mean, maybe you disagree with me. I'd love to hear your opinion, but that's what it felt like to me. It was rough. And another problem I had with the book was it was not as subtle as the original trilogy was. When you're reading things, she was just way more, what's the word, overt? Way more overt with the things that she was trying to say. So was it necessary? Yes, it was necessary. Because it did what the original trilogy could not. You have really good writing in this book. Possibly better than the original trilogy, but not as subtle. So in a way better and in a way worse. It's a lot more philosophical, psychological, mental, retrospective than the other ones were. Yeah. As far as what did it contain, sexual content was extremely low. I mean, there was some suggestion of sex in payment for food. There was some light kissing. I mean, really nothing here that would like make you scandalous. It's just like normal stuff. It wasn't like over the top or anything. Language was light. It was there, but it was light. Honestly, I found it unremarkable. I found the language unremarkable. So it's going to have like maybe a cuss word or two, but nothing that's going to make you feel like, whoa, I feel dirty. Like nothing over the top. And I did wait a couple weeks to do this review just so I would kind of see my afterwards impression. And my afterward impression is it's a good book for what it was. I'm definitely not the audience, and that's just how it is. Violence is very light. It could have been very graphic. I'm used to very graphic violence in my books, and it was very light. Religion is not really existent at all. The only religion that exists is the worship of Panem, and the slaughter of the children and all that stuff. But that was pretty much the same thing in the original trilogy. I don't remember there ever being reference, which is kind of weird because ever since there's been humanity, there's been religion of some sort, in some shape. I mean, they just go hand in hand. Historically, you can't deny that. And so that feels a little bit weird. It makes the world feel a little more hollow, but I think that it's more of making a comment, about the culture. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. Anyways, moving on from there, she does have a lot of political things that she gets across with these books, and obviously I don't agree with everything that she says, and I feel like sometimes people don't do that. They read books and they just think that they have to instantly agree with everything. Look, you can read a book and not agree with everything that the author says in the book and not agree with everything about the author in real life. I mean, you can just enjoy a book and just let that be it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a Christian, and the grand majority of fiction that I read is not Christian. If I had to agree with everybody perfectly about everything that I read, man, I really wouldn't read much of anything, except for maybe some Amish romances. Yeah. Anyways, so this book, was it good? Yeah, it was good. Maybe like a 3.5 to 4.5, somewhere in there. And why there's such a wide variation there is, I'm not real sure. It really wasn't for me, but I see that she did a good job, and I see how it would appeal to other people. It didn't really stick with me after the fact. It's not a book that I'll ever reread, and so whereas my time reading was okay, it's not like I hated it or anything. I finished the whole book. It didn't leave me with like, wow, that was such a great book. I want to go back and read the original trilogy. But, young adult really isn't my thing, and dystopian really isn't my thing either, so take that for whatever it is. I would recommend this to people who get into young adult, who enjoyed the original trilogy. Should you read it before the original trilogy? Not necessarily. You could or you couldn't, it doesn't really matter.